The revolver pressed cold against Clara's temple as Evelyn Graves smiled like death itself. You really thought a pathetic widow could steal what's mine? Blood dripped from Wade's forehead where Travis had struck him down. The ranch hands stood frozen, outnumbered by Evelyn's hired guns. Clara's hands trembled, not from fear, but rage. She'd survived too much to die here. Go ahead, Clara whispered. Pull the trigger. But know this, you'll never own him. Want to see how an unwanted widow destroyed the most powerful woman in Wyoming? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The stagecoach hit another rut, and Clara Bennett's head slammed against the wooden frame hard enough to rattle her teeth. She didn't complain. Complaining required someone to care, and the driver hadn't looked at her once during the entire 70-mile journey from Cheyenne. 42 years old, widowed 6 months, broke. Those 3 facts defined everything Clara Bennett had become. After cholera took her husband and the bank took everything else. Society had rules for women like her. Remarry quickly to a desperate man, move in with relatives who resented feeding another mouth, or disappear into factory work until your body gave out. Clara chose none of those. Instead, she answered a newspaper advertisement so small she almost missed it. Cook needed. Wyoming territory. Hard work. Harder winters. Don't apply unless you can handle both. The stagecoach lurched to a stop, throwing Clara forward. Her trunk crashed against the seat. The cast-iron skillet she'd wrapped in her only good shawl clanged like a funeral bell. Iron Hollow Ranch, the driver grunted. He didn't help her down. Clara stepped into Wyoming dust so thick it coated her tongue. The wind hit her face like a slap, carrying the smell of cattle, manure, and something wild she couldn't name. Mountains rose in the distance, brutal and beautiful. Closer, a sprawling ranch spread across the valley. Wooden buildings that looked like they'd been hammered together by men who valued function over beauty. Corrals packed with horses and cattle dotting the hills like scattered stones. 3 ranch hands stood near the barn, watching. Then they started laughing. Clara heard every word, even though they weren't trying to whisper. That's the new cook? Boss must have lost his damn mind. She won't last a week. Look at her. Clara looked down at herself. Heavy frame, worn dress, mud-splattered boots, and a face that had never been pretty even when she was young. She'd spent 20 years married to a man who reminded her daily that she should be grateful anyone wanted her at all. Then he died, and she discovered the world agreed with him. The laughter cut deeper than it should have. She grabbed her trunk, heavier than it looked because everything she owned was inside, and started walking toward the main house. Her arms screamed, her back ached, sweat soaked through her dress before she made it halfway. Need help? Clara turned. A tall cowboy with a crooked smile stood behind her, but his eyes weren't kind. They were testing her. No, Clara said flatly. Suit yourself. He walked away grinning. By the time Clara reached the porch, her hands were shaking and her lungs burned. She set the trunk down harder than intended. The crash echoed across the yard. The front door opened. Wade Mercer didn't look like a man who smiled often. Tall, lean, somewhere in his 40s with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and eyes that had seen too much. He wore work-stained clothes and moved like someone whose body hurt in places that never fully healed. You're late, he said. Stagecoach broke down twice, Clara replied. Wade studied her the way men studied livestock, assessing value, looking for weaknesses. His gaze lingered on her rough hands, her sturdy build, the way she stood despite obvious exhaustion. You know how to cook for 20 men? He asked. I know how to cook for people who are hungry. They'll complain. Everyone complains. Wade's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Kitchen's through the back. You'll share a room with the other woman on the ranch, Mrs. Hazel. She handles laundry. Meals are sunrise, noon, and sundown. You miss one, you don't eat. Same goes for the crew. What about supplies? We have what we have. Make it work. Clara nodded. No negotiation, no discussion. Just brutal simplicity. Wade turned to leave, then stopped. Travis, the kid who offered to help with your trunk, he's a problem. Steer clear of him. I can handle myself. Wade looked at her again, longer this time. We'll see. The kitchen was a disaster. Grease coated the stove so thick Clara could scrape it off with her fingernail. Flour spilled across the counter had hardened into cement. The floor crunched under her boots, and she didn't want to know why. Dirty pots sat stacked in a corner, growing something that might have once been food. Mrs. Hazel appeared in the doorway, a wiry woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. "You the new cook?" Hazel asked. "Clara Bennett. They give you the speech about how hard everything is yet?" Wade did. Hazel snorted. Wade Mercer could make a sunny day sound like a funeral. "Don't take it personal. War broke something in him he never bothered fixing." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You really going to try feeding this crew?" "That's why I'm here. Last cook quit after 2 weeks. One before that lasted 3 days. These boys eat like wolves and complain twice as loud." Clara surveyed the wreckage of the kitchen. She'd cleaned worse. After her husband died, she'd scrubbed floors in boarding houses where men tracked in mud, blood, and vomit. This was nothing. "I need hot water, soap, and someone to haul out this trash," Clara said. Hazel grinned. "Now you sound like someone who might actually survive." By sunset, Clara's back screamed and her hands were raw, but the kitchen looked almost human. She'd scrubbed the stove until the iron showed through, scoured the counters, swept the floor 3 times, and organized supplies that had been thrown into cabinets like someone was trying to hide evidence. They didn't have much: flour, cornmeal, salt pork, dried beans, some withered potatoes that had started sprouting, a few eggs, no fresh vegetables except some sad-looking carrots, no butter, no cream, no sugar except a single half-empty jar. Clara had worked with less. The crew came in for supper like a stampede. 20 exhausted, filthy men who smelled like horses and looked at Clara like she was a problem they didn't want to solve. They dropped onto benches around a long wooden table, loud and rough. Travis, the young cowboy who'd mocked her earlier, sat at the far end. He caught her eye and smiled in a way that made her skin crawl. Clara ignored him and started serving. She'd made the only thing possible with what she had: pan-fried salt pork, boiled potatoes with the last of the bacon grease, and cornbread that was more corn than bread because the flour was running low. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't pretty, but it was hot, and it was edible. The crew ate in silence. Then one of them spoke. "This ain't half bad." Another cowboy grunted agreement. "Better than the slop Jenkins used to make." "Jenkins couldn't cook if his life depended on it," someone else added. "Man burned water." A ripple of laughter went through the table. Not cruel this time, just tired men appreciating something that didn't taste like punishment. Travis didn't laugh. He stared at his plate, then looked up at Clara. "Cornbread's dry." The table went quiet. Clara met his eyes. "Then drink more water." A few cowboys snickered. Travis's face flushed red, but before he could respond, Wade's voice cut through the room. "You got a problem with the food, Travis. You're welcome to cook tomorrow." Travis looked down fast. "No, sir." Wade didn't acknowledge Clara, but she caught the smallest nod in her direction before he stood and left. After the crew cleared out, Hazel appeared with a cup of weak coffee. "You handled that better than I expected." "I've dealt with worse than Travis," Clara said. "Maybe, but he's the type who holds grudges." Hazel sipped her coffee. "Wade don't tolerate disrespect, though. That's something." Clara scrubbed the last pot, her hands aching. "Wade doesn't seem like he tolerates much of anything. He's fair. That's rarer than you think out here." Hazel set down her cup. "You did good tonight. Don't let the crew's grumbling fool you. They ate every bite." Clara glanced at the empty pots, the cleaned plates. It wasn't praise exactly, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. 3 days passed. Then a week. Clara fell into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, start the fire, make coffee strong enough to wake the dead, cook breakfast, clean, prepare lunch, clean, cook supper, clean, collapse into bed, repeat. Her body hurt in new places every day, but she didn't complain. Complaining gave people permission to dismiss you. The crew stopped laughing when she walked by. A few even nodded. One cowboy named Samuel, older than the rest, with a limp from a broken leg that healed wrong, started helping her haul water without being asked. "You remind me of my ma," Samuel said one morning. "She could make a feast out of nothing." "Your mother sounds smart," Clara replied. "She was. Died when I was 12. Never met another woman half as tough." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to Clara in months. Travis, however, got worse. He started small, knocking over the salt, spilling coffee, leaving his plate unwashed. Then he escalated. One morning, Clara found the flour sack torn open, white powder spilled across the counter. Another time, someone, definitely Travis, left the door to the chicken coop open, and it took 2 hours to round up the birds. Clara didn't report him. Tattling made you weak, and she'd already been called weak enough for one lifetime. Instead, she started locking supplies in the pantry. She woke earlier to check the coop. She cleaned up his messes without a word. And she waited. Sunday came and half the crew rode into town. Wade stayed behind, working on the books in his office. Clara spent the afternoon making bread, real bread this time, because a supply wagon had finally brought flour. The smell filled the house. Wade appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking uncomfortable. He wasn't a man built for casual conversation. "You need something?" Clara asked, not looking up from the dough she was kneading. "Smells good," Wade said. Clara almost smiled. "It's just bread. Hasn't smelled like this in years." They stood in silence, not awkward exactly, but waited, like two people who didn't know how to talk to each other but wanted to try. "Why'd you hire me?" Clara asked suddenly. Wade didn't answer right away. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know why most people don't last out here?" "No." "They quit. The second things get hard. I read your letter 3 times. You didn't ask about pay. Didn't ask about days off. You just said you needed work and you do it right." He paused. "That told me everything." Clara looked at him, really looked. She saw exhaustion carved into his face, scars that weren't just physical, and something else. Loneliness, maybe. The kind that came from years of keeping everyone at arm's length. "I meant what I said," Clara told him. "I'll work hard." "I know." Wade straightened. "The crew's starting to notice. That matters." He left before Clara could respond. She stood there, hands covered in flour, heart beating faster than it should. Everything changed the day Evelyn Graves came to the ranch. Clara had heard the name before. Everyone had. Evelyn Graves owned half the businesses in town, had a house bigger than the church, and threw parties where politicians and railroad men made deals that changed the territory. She was beautiful in the way that came from money. Perfect clothes, perfect hair, perfect everything. And she hated being told no. Evelyn arrived in a carriage so polished it looked obscene against the dusty ranch. She wore a blue dress that probably cost more than Clara made in a year. 2 men accompanied her, both armed. Wade met her outside, and Clara watched from the kitchen window. "Wade Mercer," Evelyn purred. "You've been avoiding my invitations." "Been busy," Wade said flatly. "Too busy for supper? I'm hosting a dinner next week. Every important rancher in the territory will be there. You should attend." "Not interested." Evelyn's smile tightened. "You can't isolate yourself forever, Wade. Iron Hollow needs allies." "I have the allies I need." "Do you?" Evelyn glanced toward the house, and her eyes landed on Clara standing in the window. Her expression shifted, something cold and dismissive. "I see you finally found a cook." "She's good at her job." "I'm sure she is." Evelyn's tone dripped with condescension. "Although I have to say, darling, you could do better. If you need help finding someone more suitable, I know several—" "Clara stays," Wade interrupted. Evelyn blinked. She wasn't used to being cut off. "Of course," she said smoothly. "I only want what's best for you, Wade. You know that." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "We've known each other a long time. I've always believed Iron Hollow could be something greater, with the right partnership." Wade moved back, subtle but deliberate. "I'm not looking for a partnership." The temperature dropped. Evelyn's smile vanished. "You're making a mistake." "Wouldn't be the first time." She stared at him, and Clara saw something dangerous flash across her face. Then Evelyn turned, climbed back into her carriage, and left without another word. Wade stood there long after the dust settled. Clara stepped outside. "Who was that?" "Trouble," Wade said. "And she's just getting started." That night, Travis made his worst mistake. Clara was finishing the dishes when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Travis blocking the doorway, grinning. "You think you're something special, don't you?" he said. "I think I'm tired and you're in my way," Clara replied. Travis stepped closer. "Boss man defending you. Evelyn Graves noticing you. You got people talking. Then they need better things to talk about. You don't belong here." His voice dropped, meaner now. You're just some fat old widow who got lucky. Wade'll get bored of you soon enough. Clara set down the plate she was holding very carefully. She'd heard worse. She'd survived worse. But something inside her, the part that had been bent and broken and beaten down for years, finally snapped. You're right, Clara said quietly. I don't belong here. I'm too old, too plain, and nobody wanted me. But I'm still here. And I'll still be here long after you've proven you're nothing but a coward who picks on women because real men scare you. Travis's face went purple. He grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise, and Wade's voice came from behind him, cold as winter. Let her go! Travis spun around. Wade stood in the doorway, and the look on his face could have stopped a charging bull. I was just... Travis started. I don't care what you were doing. Touch her again, and you're done. Not just at this ranch. I'll make sure no one in the territory hires you. Travis let go like Clara's arm had caught fire. Yes, sir? Get out of my sight. Travis practically ran. Wade looked at Clara. You okay? Her arm throbbed, but she nodded. I've had worse. I don't doubt it. Wade hesitated, then added, You didn't need me to step in. I saw how you handled him, but I wanted to make something clear. What? Nobody touches my people. Not Travis, not anyone. My people. 2 words Clara had never expected to hear again. Thank you, she said softly. Wade nodded and left. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding, her arm aching, and for the first time since arriving at Iron Hollow Ranch, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Spring storms rolled in the next week, brutal and relentless. Rain turned the ranch into a sea of mud. The crew worked from dawn until dark trying to keep the cattle from scattering, and Clara worked just as hard keeping them fed. She made stew that could stick to your ribs, cornbread that didn't fall apart, and coffee so strong it could raise the dead. The crew stopped complaining entirely. They started saying thank you when she served them. A few even complimented the food. Travis kept his distance, and Wade started spending more time in the kitchen, not in an obvious way. He'd come in to check supplies or review the budget or ask about inventory, but he'd linger. Sometimes he'd drink coffee while Clara cooked. Other times he'd just stand there, watching her work. You don't have to supervise me, Clara said one evening. I'm not supervising. I'm... Wade trailed off. What? It's quiet in here. I forgot what that felt like. Clara understood exactly what he meant. They started talking. Small things at first. Weather, supplies, the crew. Then deeper things. Wade told her about the war, about losing men under his command, about coming home broken and building the ranch because he didn't know what else to do. Clara told him about her husband, about years of being told she wasn't good enough, about watching him die and realizing she felt relieved instead of sad. Does that make me terrible? Clara asked. No, Wade said. It makes you honest. The kitchen became their refuge. Late at night, after the crew slept, they'd sit at the table drinking coffee and talking about everything and nothing. Wade laughed for the first time, a rusty, unpracticed sound that made Clara's chest ache. And slowly, something shifted between them. Nothing was said. Nothing was promised. But Clara caught Wade looking at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. And she found herself thinking about him when she should have been thinking about bread. Then the flood came. It started with rain, 3 days of endless, punishing rain that turned the valley into a swamp. The creek swelled into a river, pastures flooded, cattle scattered into the hills. Wade and the entire crew rode out at dawn to round them up before they drowned or got lost completely. Stay here, Wade told Clara. If the water gets too high, get to the main house, 2nd floor. I will, Clara promised. But when the supply shed started flooding, the shed that held food, medicine, tools, everything they needed to survive, Clara made a choice. She waded into the water. It was colder than she expected. The current pulled at her legs, trying to knock her down. Clara grabbed the shed door, forced it open, and started hauling supplies to higher ground. Flour, cornmeal, salt, medicine. The water rose higher. Clara's dress dragged her down. Her boots filled. She couldn't feel her legs anymore, but she kept moving. One more sack, one more crate. The current surged and Clara went under. Water filled her mouth, her nose. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The cold crushed her chest. Then hands grabbed her, dragging her up. Hazel, The older woman had tied a rope around her waist and fought through the flood to reach Clara. Together, they dragged the last of the supplies to safety before collapsing on the porch, gasping. "You damn fool," Hazel wheezed. "You almost died." "Had to save it," Clara choked out. "We need it." Hazel stared at her, then started laughing. "You're crazier than I thought. We might actually be friends." Clara laughed too, because what else could she do? Wade returned 4 days later with most of the herd and half his crew injured. He looked like death, soaked, exhausted, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. He found Clara in the kitchen, cooking. "You're alive," he said. "So are you." Wade crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a crushing hug. Clara froze. Then slowly, she wrapped her arms around him and held on. They stood like that, 2 broken people who'd somehow found each other in the middle of hell, and didn't let go until Hazel cleared her throat loudly from the doorway. "Save it for later," Hazel said. "We got injured men who need food and bandages." Wade stepped back, his face flushed. "Right." But before he left, he caught Clara's hand and squeezed once. And Clara knew this was just the beginning. The morning after Wade pulled Clara into that hug, neither of them mentioned it. Wade left before sunrise to assess flood damage with Samuel and 2 other hands. Clara threw herself into cooking for the injured men, pretending her heart wasn't still hammering from the feeling of his arms around her. Hazel noticed everything. "You going to talk about it, or are we going to pretend that didn't happen?" Hazel asked while helping Clara roll bandages. "Nothing happened," Clara said. "Right. And I'm the Queen of England." Hazel tied off a bandage with more force than necessary. "Wade Mercer hasn't touched another human being in 5 years except to shake hands or throw punches. So yeah, something happened." Clara's hand stilled. "It was just... he was relieved I was alive." "Keep telling yourself that." Hazel stood, gathering the finished bandages. "But when Evelyn Graves hears about this, and she will, things are going to get ugly fast." "Why would she care?" Hazel looked at Clara like she'd just said the sky was green. "You really don't see it, do you? Evelyn's been circling Wade like a vulture for 3 years. She wants this ranch, and she wants him. You're standing in the way of both." Clara's stomach twisted. She'd been so focused on surviving day to day that she hadn't seen the bigger picture. Evelyn Graves wasn't just some rich woman making social calls. She was competition, and Clara had never won anything in her life. The thought sat heavy in her chest all morning, through breakfast service, through cleaning, through everything. By noon, when Wade finally returned covered in mud and looking worse than before, Clara had almost convinced herself to keep her distance. Then he walked straight to her and said, "We need to talk." Clara's throat went dry. "About what?" "Not here." Wade glanced at the crew members scattered around the main room. "Kitchen, 5 minutes." He left before she could argue. Hazel appeared at Clara's elbow. "Told you." "Shut up," Clara muttered, but there was no heat in it. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Clara paced the kitchen, hands twisting in her apron. What did Wade want to talk about? The hug? The ranch? Was he going to tell her to leave because she was causing problems? Wade appeared in the doorway, closed the door behind him, and stood there looking uncomfortable. "The flood destroyed half our best grazing land," he said finally. "We lost 6 head of cattle. The creek changed course and took out 2 fences. Winter supplies are gone except what you saved." Clara waited. That wasn't what he wanted to talk about. Wade ran a hand through his hair, a rare nervous gesture. "And Evelyn sent a message this morning. She's calling in the loan." "What loan?" 3 years ago, drought nearly killed us. I borrowed money to keep the ranch running. Evelyn was the only one willing to lend." Wade's jaw tightened. "The terms were generous. I've been paying it back slowly, but there's a clause that says she can demand full payment any time if the ranch's value is threatened." "The flood," Clara said. "Yeah, she's claiming the damage makes us high risk. Wants the full amount in 30 days or she takes the ranch." Wade looked at Clara, and she saw something close to desperation in his eyes. "It's $2,200. Clara's knees went weak. That was a fortune. An impossible amount. "Do you have it?" she asked. "Not even close. Maybe 800 if I sell everything that's not nailed down." Wade slammed his fist against the wall, making Clara jump. "She's been waiting for this. The second I showed interest in someone else, she moved." The words hung between them. interest in someone else. Wade, Clara started. I know what you're going to say, Wade interrupted. That this is too complicated. That you didn't sign up for this mess. And you're right, you didn't. So, if you want to leave, I'll pay you what I owe and find you passage anywhere you want to go. Clara stared at him. After everything, after she'd nearly drowned saving his supplies, after late nights talking, after he'd defended her against Travis and Evelyn, he thought she'd run at the first sign of trouble? Are you firing me? She asked. What? No, I'm giving you a choice. Then I'm staying. Wade blinked. Clara, you don't understand. Evelyn won't stop at the loan. She'll come after you. She'll spread rumors, poison the town against you, make your life hell. Let her try. This isn't a game. She's destroyed people before. Clara stepped closer, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into Wade's face, the fear he was trying to hide. I spent 20 years married to a man who told me I was worthless. Then I spent 6 months watching people treat me like I was invisible. I came here expecting nothing except hard work and a place to sleep. Her voice steadied. But I found something else. I found people who respect me. I found work that matters. And I found... She stopped, not quite brave enough to finish that sentence. Wade's eyes searched hers. Found what? A reason to stay, Clara said quietly. The air between them changed. Wade moved closer, so close Clara could feel the heat coming off him despite his wet clothes. His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed against her cheek so gently it made her chest ache. She'll try to destroy you, Wade whispered. She can try. Wade smiled. A real smile this time, not the bitter half-smirk he usually wore. You're stubborn as hell. So are you. They stood like that, close enough to kiss, but not quite crossing that line. Then voices erupted outside, and Wade stepped back, the moment breaking. Samuel burst through the door. Boss, we got a problem. Marcus just rode in from town. Says Evelyn's been talking. Wade's expression hardened instantly. What's she saying? Samuel glanced at Clara, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe we should discuss this private. Say it, Clara told him. Samuel sighed. She's telling everyone that you and Wade are involved, that you seduced him to secure your position, that the ranch is falling apart because Wade's distracted by... He stopped, face flushing. By inappropriate relations with the help. Clara felt like she'd been slapped. She'd known Evelyn would attack, but hearing it laid out so bluntly still hurt. Wade's face went deadly calm. Get the men together, every hand who can ride. We're going to town. Boss, maybe we should... Now, Samuel. Samuel left quickly. Clara grabbed Wade's arm. Don't. You'll make it worse. She doesn't get to do this. She already did. Going to town and making a scene won't help. Wade turned to face her fully. So what do you want me to do? Let her spread lies about you? Yes, Clara said firmly. Let her talk. Let the whole town talk. Because the truth is, I don't care what they think. I care about this ranch. I care about the crew. And I care about... She stopped herself again. About what? Wade pressed. Clara met his eyes. About not losing what I just found. Wade studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, he pulled her into another hug. This one was different. Not desperate relief, but something steadier. A choice. Okay, he said against her hair. We do this your way. But if she crosses the line, then we'll deal with it together. Wade pulled back just enough to look at her. Together. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. But it was enough. For now. The rumors hit Iron Hollow Ranch like a second flood. Within a week, suppliers who'd done business with Wade for years suddenly had inventory problems. The blacksmith raised his prices. The grain merchant demanded payment up front. Even the local doctor, a man Wade had helped during the drought, started making excuses about being too busy to visit injured ranch hands. Evelyn's influence spread like poison. Clara felt it most when she went to town for supplies. Women she'd never met crossed the street to avoid her. Shopkeepers who'd been neutral became openly hostile. One particularly vicious old woman actually spat at Clara's feet and called her a whore. Clara kept walking, head high, purchases made. She didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But it wore on her. They'll get bored eventually, Hazel said one evening while they prepared supper. Small towns always do.
Something else will come along to gossip about. What if they don't? Clara asked quietly. Hazel stopped chopping onions. You having second thoughts? No, but I'm not stupid either. This is getting worse, not better. That's because Evelyn's scared. Clara looked up. Scared of what? Of losing. Hazel pointed the knife at Clara. You're everything she's not. Real, honest, someone who works for what she has instead of buying it. Wade sees that. The crew sees that. Hell, even the town will see it eventually if you don't run. I'm not running. Good. Because Wade needs someone who won't. That night, Travis approached Clara for the first time since Wade's warning. He looked uncomfortable, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes on the floor. Ma'am, he started. Clara tensed. Travis? I wanted to. I should have. He took a breath. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for what I said. It was wrong. Clara stared at him, genuinely shocked. What changed? Travis finally met her eyes. You saved the supplies during the flood. Could have died doing it, and you did it because you care about this place, about us. He shuffled his feet. I've been thinking about that, about how you stayed when anyone else would have run, and I realized I was a real bastard to someone who didn't deserve it. It was the most honest thing Clara had heard from him. Thank you, she said carefully. I appreciate you saying that. I also wanted you to know what Evelyn's saying in town. It's garbage. The crew knows it. We've been setting people straight when we can. Something warm bloomed in Clara's chest. You don't have to do that. Yeah, we do. You're one of us now. Travis gave her a small smile. Plus, Wade would probably shoot us if we didn't. Clara laughed despite everything. Probably. After Travis left, Clara stood in the kitchen feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. These rough, hard men who'd mocked her when she arrived were now defending her reputation in town. They'd chosen her side. It mattered more than she could put into words. Wade appeared in the doorway like he'd been summoned by her thoughts. Travis talked to you? He apologized. Good. I told him 2 weeks ago. Clara raised an eyebrow. You told him to apologize? Suggested strongly, with words like unemployment and broken bones. Wade entered the kitchen properly, looking around. You already cleaned up from supper? Finished an hour ago. You work too hard. Says the man who hasn't stopped working in 4 days. Wade smiled tiredly. Fair point. He poured himself coffee from the pot Clara kept warm and sat at the table. Sit with me? Clara joined him, aware that this had become their routine. Late evening, kitchen, coffee, conversation. We're not going to make the payment, Wade said without preamble. Clara's stomach dropped. How short are you? Even if I sell every head of cattle we have left, every horse except what we need to work the ranch, and my soul to the devil himself, we'd still be $600 short. 600 might as well have been 6,000. What happens if you can't pay? Clara asked. Evelyn takes the ranch. She'll let me stay on as foreman if I want, running the place for her, or I can leave and start over somewhere else with nothing. That's not a choice. No, it's a cage. Wade drank his coffee, staring at nothing. I built this place from dirt. Every fence post, every building, every damn decision. And I'm going to lose it because I was stupid enough to borrow money from a woman who doesn't understand the word no. Clara reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers were rough, scarred, warm. He looked down at their joined hands like he'd never seen anything like it. We'll find a way, Clara said. How? I don't know yet, but we will. Wade's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Why are you still here, Clara? Really? She could have lied, could have said something safe about needing the job or having nowhere else to go. But she was tired of lying, even to herself. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid, Clara said. I'm not afraid of failing, not afraid of being too much or not enough, not afraid of what people think. She squeezed his hand. I'm just here, and I want to stay here. Wade stood, pulling her up with him. They were close again, that charged space between them crackling with everything unsaid. If you stay, Wade said quietly, Evelyn will make your life hell. The town will keep talking. Things will get worse before they get better. I know. And you still want to stay? Yes.
Wade's free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I'm terrified most of the time. That's what makes it bravery. Then he kissed her. It wasn't smooth or practiced. Wade kissed like a man who'd forgotten how, hesitant and careful and achingly gentle. Clara kissed back like a woman who'd never been kissed like she mattered, her hands gripping his shirt to keep from shaking. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against hers. That complicate things? He asked. Probably. Regret it? Not even a little. Wade smiled, and Clara realized she'd do just about anything to see that smile again. The next morning, Evelyn escalated. A writer arrived at dawn with a formal letter demanding payment within 15 days instead of 30. The message was clear. Evelyn was done waiting. Wade read the letter twice, then crumpled it and threw it across the room. She's backing me into a corner. So back her into one, Clara said. Wade turned. How? I don't know yet. But there has to be something she wants more than this ranch. There isn't. This is about control. About winning. Clara thought hard, turning the problem over in her mind like dough that wouldn't rise. What did someone like Evelyn Graves actually want? Money? She had plenty. Power? She controlled the town. Respect? Respect. The Cattlemen's Association dinner, Clara said suddenly. Wade frowned. What about it? It's next month, right? Every rancher in the territory attends, including Evelyn. So? So Evelyn wants to be seen as the most important person there. She wants respect from men who still see her as just a rich widow playing at business. Clara's mind raced. What if we turn that against her? I'm not following. You said she wants you as an ally, someone legitimate to make her look serious. If you publicly reject her at the dinner in front of everyone who matters, it damages her reputation, makes her look weak. Wade shook his head. That'll make her angrier, not back down. Maybe. Or maybe she'll realize that destroying you destroys her own credibility, that the town will start questioning why she's so obsessed with one failing ranch. Clara stepped closer. It's leverage, Wade. It's something. Wade studied her with new appreciation. You've got a ruthless streak. I learned from the best, Clara replied, thinking of every petty social battle she'd watched women wage during her marriage. Evelyn thinks she's the only one who knows how to play games, but I've been surviving games like this my whole life. I just never had anything worth fighting for before. Wade pulled her close, kissing her hard. Remind me never to underestimate you. I plan to. They spent the next week preparing. Wade reached out to other ranchers who'd also borrowed from Evelyn, feeling out their frustrations. Clara quietly talked to ranchers' wives when they came to town, planting seeds of doubt about Evelyn's real motivations. The crew worked harder than ever, determined to prove Iron Hollow was thriving despite the rumors. They repaired fences in record time, rounded up scattered cattle, made the ranch look as successful as possible. And slowly, quietly, people started noticing. A few suppliers apologized for the confusion and resumed normal business. The doctor stopped by to check on the injured men, claiming he'd been dealing with a family emergency. Even the hateful old woman who'd spat at Clara nodded stiffly when they passed on the street. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. Then, exactly 1 week before payment was due, Evelyn herself showed up at the ranch. She arrived alone this time, no armed men, no fancy carriage. Just Evelyn in a simple dress, looking almost human. Wade met her outside. Clara watched from the window, ready to intervene if needed. I'm here to make an offer, Evelyn said without preamble. I'm listening, Wade replied, voice flat. Marry me, and I'll forgive the entire loan. Clara's blood went cold. Wade didn't even hesitate. No. Evelyn's composure cracked slightly. You haven't heard the full offer. Don't need to. The answer's no. Wade, be reasonable. We're both alone, both running operations that would benefit from partnership. Together, we'd control half the territory. I don't want to control anything. I want to run my ranch in peace. With her? Evelyn's voice turned sharp, gesturing toward the house where Clara stood. That pathetic widow who can't even... Finish that sentence, Wade interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. And you'll regret it. Evelyn stopped. For the first time since Clara had met her, Evelyn Graves looked uncertain. She's using you. Evelyn tried again, softer now. Can't you see that? She's desperate and alone, and she saw an opportunity.
She saved this ranch during the flood while I was gone. She's earned the crew's respect through hard work, not manipulation, and she stayed when anyone with sense would have run from the mess you've created. Wade stepped closer. So yeah, I choose her. Every damn time.
The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She gripped the windowsill to stay upright. Evelyn's face went pale, then flushed with rage. You're making a mistake. My mistake to make. You have 1 week, Wade. 1 week to find $2,200, or I take everything. And when I do, I'll make sure that woman never works in this territory again. I'll destroy her so completely. Bob Ishas. Guart. Try it, Wade said. And I'll spend every dollar I have left making sure every rancher in Wyoming knows exactly what kind of person you are. How you loan money to struggling operations just to steal them later. How you manipulate and threaten and ruin people for sport. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. You want a war, Evelyn? I'll give you one, but you won't like how it ends. Evelyn stared at him, breathing hard. Then she turned and left without another word. Clara ran outside the second Evelyn's horse disappeared over the hill. Wade stood in the same spot, fists clenched, shaking slightly. Wade? He turned and pulled her into his arms so hard it knocked the breath out of her. I meant it, he said fiercely. Every word. Clara held him tight. I know. If we lose this ranch, we lose it together. I'm not letting you go. I'm not going anywhere. They stood like that until the shaking stopped, until the adrenaline faded, until they were just two people holding onto each other in the middle of a battlefield. That night, the entire crew gathered in the main house. Samuel stood up first. We all heard what happened today, he said, and we got something to say. He looked at the other hands, who nodded. We're taking a vote. Anyone who wants to can forfeit wages until the loan's paid. Put it toward the debt. Wade stood quickly. Absolutely not. You've all got families, obligations. We've also got loyalty, another cowboy interrupted. You gave most of us jobs when no one else would. This is us returning the favor. It's not enough to cover the full amount, Samuel admitted, but it's close. Maybe $500 total if we all contribute. Clara felt tears threatening. $500. Combined with what Wade already had, they'd still be short, but barely. Wade's voice was rough when he spoke. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just promise when this is over, you'll throw the biggest damn party this ranch has ever seen. The room erupted in agreement. Clara caught Wade's eye across the crowd. He looked overwhelmed, grateful, and something else, hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survive this. The week passed in a blur. Clara cooked enough food to feed an army. Wade sold everything he could spare. The crew worked like machines, determined to keep the ranch running smoothly despite the chaos. 3 days before payment was due, they were still $400 short. 2 days before, $300. The day before, $150. Close. So agonizingly close. Clara lay awake that final night, doing math in her head over and over, trying to find money that didn't exist. Beside her, because they'd stopped pretending they weren't sharing a bed, Wade stared at the ceiling. We could run, he said quietly. Take what we have and start over somewhere else. We could, Clara agreed. But we won't. No, we won't. They fell asleep holding hands, facing the end together. Morning came too fast. Wade dressed in his best clothes. Still worn, still patched, but clean. Clara put on her second-best dress and the only piece of jewelry she had left, her mother's silver locket. They rode to town in the wagon, the crew following on horseback like an honor guard. Evelyn waited in the bank with her lawyer and half the town watching. She looked victorious already. Mr. Mercer, the bank manager said nervously, do you have the payment? Wade placed a heavy leather pouch on the desk. Count it. The manager did, his face growing longer with each stack of bills. Finally, he looked up. You're $120 short. Evelyn smiled. Such a shame. I'm afraid. Wait. Clara stepped forward, fingers fumbling with her locket. Her mother's locket, the last piece of her old life, the only thing worth anything she had left. Clara, no, Wade said. She ignored him, placing the locket on the desk. How much is this worth? The manager picked it up, examining it carefully. Real silver. Good craftsmanship. He looked uncomfortable. Perhaps $80. Still short. Clara's mind raced. What else did she have? Nothing. Just herself and the skillet. She'd carried that cast iron skillet across half the country. It had been her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of women who'd survived through strength and stubbornness. Clara ran outside to the wagon and grabbed it, ignoring everyone's confused stares. She marched back into the bank and slammed it on the desk. "This too," she said. The manager blinked. "Ma'am, it's a cooking pan. It's 50-year-old cast iron in perfect condition. Someone will buy it. Perhaps $40? That's still not enough," Evelyn interrupted, standing now. "The payment is due in full right now, or the ranch is mine." The room fell silent. Then the bank door opened and Samuel walked in carrying his hat. "Got $30 here from some folks who believe in doing right." He placed money on the desk. Another ranch hand followed. "20 for me." Then another and another. The crew emptied their pockets. Not the wages they'd already contributed, but their own personal money. Savings they'd been holding on to for emergencies or family or futures. The manager counted it all with shaking hands. $2,198, he announced. $2 short. Evelyn's laugh was cruel. So close, but the terms were clear. Here. An old woman stepped forward from the crowd, the same woman who'd spat at Clara weeks ago. She placed 2 silver dollars on the desk, not looking at anyone. For the widow who didn't run. The bank manager stared at the complete payment. $2,200, he said quietly. Paid in full. Evelyn's face went white, then red, then a splotchy purple. "This is ridiculous. That's not... You can't..." "The debt is satisfied," the lawyer said, clearly trying not to smile. "The ranch remains with Mr. Mercer." Wade grabbed Clara and spun her around, both of them laughing like idiots. The crew whooped. Even some townspeople clapped. Evelyn stood frozen, defeated for the first time in her life. She left without a word, and Clara never saw anyone look so small. The celebration that night at Iron Hollow Ranch was loud, messy, and absolutely perfect. The crew hauled out every bottle of whiskey they'd been saving, roasted 2 whole pigs, and sang songs so off-key that the horses probably complained. Clara cooked until her feet ached, then cooked some more because she couldn't stop smiling long enough to care. Wade found her in the kitchen around midnight, flour in her hair and grease on her apron. "You're supposed to be celebrating, not working," he said. "This is how I celebrate." Clara gestured at the pies cooling on the counter. "Besides, someone has to feed these idiots, or they'll burn the barn down trying to cook drunk." Wade laughed and pulled her away from the stove. "Dance with me." "There's no music." "Don't need music." They swayed together in the kitchen, moving to nothing but their own rhythm. Wade wasn't graceful. He stepped on her feet twice, but Clara didn't care. She rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat and felt something close to peace. "We should get married," Wade said suddenly. Clara stopped moving. "What?" Wade pulled back to look at her, and he was completely serious. "Marry me, Clara." "You're drunk." "I'm sober as a judge. Been thinking about it all day." He cupped her face with both hands. "Evelyn tried to destroy you because of me. The town talked about you because of me. You lost your mother's locket and your grandmother's skillet because of me. The least I can do is make it official." Clara's heart clenched. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "Yeah, well, I'm not good at this." Wade's thumbs brushed her cheeks. "Let me try again. I want to marry you because when I wake up, the first thing I think about is whether you're awake yet. Because you make terrible coffee, and I drink it anyway. Because you stood up to Evelyn Graves without flinching. Because you're brave and stubborn, and you see past all my broken parts to something worth keeping." He paused. "And because I'm in love with you." The words hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Clara's eyes burned. "Wade, I'm 42. I'm not pretty. I'm not refined. I can't give you children. I don't care about any of that. The town will still talk. Evelyn will still hate us. Nothing changes." "Everything changes," Wade corrected, "because we stop pretending this is temporary. We stop acting like we're just surviving. We build something real together." Clara wanted to say yes. Every cell in her body screamed yes. But fear held her tongue, fear that this was too good, too much.
that she'd wake up and discover it was all a dream. "Can I think about it?" she asked quietly. Wade's face fell, but he nodded. "Take all the time you need." He left her standing in the kitchen, alone with her thoughts and her fears, and the weight of everything she'd never let herself want. Hazel found her an hour later, still standing in the same spot. "You're an idiot," Hazel announced. "Good to see you too. That man just offered you everything, and you said you'd think about it." Hazel grabbed Clara's shoulders and shook her slightly. "What exactly is there to think about?" "I don't know if I can do this," Clara admitted. "Be someone's wife again. Trust that it won't turn into what I had before." "Wade Mercer isn't your dead husband. You know that, right?" "I know, but what if I'm not enough? What if he realizes it?" "Stop!" Hazel's voice went hard. "You listen to me, Clara Bennett. I've watched you survive floods, fight off Evelyn Graves, and earn the respect of 20 hardened cowboys. You've got more strength in your little finger than most people have in their whole bodies. So if you're going to turn down Wade's proposal, do it because you don't love him, not because you don't think you're good enough." Clara's throat tightened. "I do love him." "Then what the hell are you waiting for?" That was the question, wasn't it? Clara found Wade in the barn an hour before dawn, checking on a mare about to foal. He didn't look surprised to see her. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No." Clara moved closer, watching him run gentle hands over the mare's swollen belly. "Wade, about what you asked, you don't have to explain, I understand." "I'm saying yes." Wade's hand stilled. He turned slowly, like he was afraid he'd heard wrong. "What?" "I'm saying yes. I'll marry you." Clara stepped close enough to touch him. "Not because I want to make things official or protect my reputation or any practical reason. I'm saying yes because I love you, because you make me laugh, because you defended me when no one else would, because you see me, really see me, and you still want me anyway." Wade pulled her into a kiss that tasted like hope and new beginnings and everything Clara had stopped believing she deserved. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "When?" he asked. "Soon as possible, before I lose my nerve." Wade laughed. "You've never lost your nerve a day in your life. There's a first time for everything." They got married 3 days later in the judge's office with Samuel and Hazel as witnesses. Clara wore her best dress, still patched, still worn, but clean. Wade borrowed a tie from Samuel and looked uncomfortable the entire time. The ceremony lasted maybe 5 minutes, the judge racing through the words like he had somewhere more important to be. Clara didn't care. When Wade slid a simple silver band on her finger, bought with money he definitely didn't have to spare, she felt something lock into place inside her chest. "You may kiss your bride," the judge said. Wade did, thoroughly enough that Samuel cleared his throat loudly. They walked out of that office married, facing a hostile town and an uncertain future, but they were facing it together. The gossip exploded within hours. Clara heard different versions every time she went to town. Wade had gotten her pregnant and married her out of obligation. Clara had trapped him with feminine wiles. They'd gotten married despite Evelyn. The marriage was a business arrangement. The marriage was a scandal. Clara stopped listening after the first week. What she couldn't ignore was Evelyn's reaction. 2 days after the wedding, every business owner who'd resumed trading with Iron Hollow suddenly had supply issues again. The blacksmith refused to shoe their horses. The general store wouldn't extend credit. Even the feed supplier claimed he was completely out of stock. Evelyn was punishing them. "She can't keep this up forever," Wade said, but he looked worried. He should be. They'd spent everything they had paying off the loan. There was no cushion, no backup, nothing left to sell. If the ranch couldn't operate, they'd starve before winter. Clara spent 3 days trying to figure out a solution. Then she remembered something Hazel had said weeks ago. Evelyn wants respect from men who still see her as just a rich widow playing at business. The Cattlemen's Association dinner was in 2 weeks. Clara found Wade in his office, staring at ledgers that wouldn't balance no matter how hard he glared at them. "I need you to take me to the association dinner," she said. Wade looked up. "Absolutely not." "Hear me out." "No. That dinner is Evelyn's domain. She'll humiliate you in front of everyone." "Let her try." Clara sat on the edge of his desk. Right now, she's controlling the narrative. We're the scandalous couple who defied her. But what if we show up together
and prove we're not ashamed, that we're not hiding? That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's strategy. Clara leaned forward. Everyone at that dinner will be watching us, watching how we act, how we treat each other, whether we look guilty or proud. If we show up looking defeated, Evelyn wins. But if we show up looking happy, looking like we chose each other and don't regret it, we take away her power. Wade rubbed his face. You realize half those ranchers think you're a gold digger who seduced me for security? Then we prove them wrong. And if we can't? If they side with Evelyn anyway? Clara smiled grimly. Then at least we went down fighting. Wade studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her hard. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the craziest. Can I be both? Apparently. The next 2 weeks were brutal. They had no money for new clothes, so Clara took apart her wedding dress and remade it into something that looked almost elegant. Wade cleaned his only suit until the fabric started thinning. They practiced walking into rooms together, talking to imaginary ranchers, acting like people who belonged. It felt ridiculous and necessary in equal measure. The night before the dinner, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Wade, watching shadows move across the ceiling. What if this doesn't work? She whispered. Wade rolled to face her. Then we figure out something else. There might not be anything else. There's always something else. He pulled her closer. We've survived floods, loans, and Evelyn Graves trying to destroy us. We'll survive this too. Clara wanted to believe him. The association dinner was held at the largest hotel in town, a building so fancy Clara felt dirty just looking at it. Ranchers arrived in expensive suits with wives wearing dresses that cost more than Clara made in a year. Everyone stared when Wade and Clara walked in. The whispers started immediately. That's her. Can you believe the nerve? Poor Wade, he must be so embarrassed. Clara's instinct was to turn around and run. Instead, she lifted her chin and tightened her grip on Wade's arm. Steady, Wade murmured. They made it 3 steps before Evelyn appeared, blocking their path. She wore a deep green dress that probably cost a small fortune and smiled like a snake. Wade, Clara, Evelyn's voice dripped false sweetness. How brave of you to attend. We were invited, Wade said flatly. Of course. Everyone's invited, though not everyone has the courage to show their face after such scandalous behavior. Evelyn's eyes fixed on Clara. Tell me, Mrs. Mercer, how does it feel knowing the entire territory is talking about you? Clara met her gaze without flinching. About the same as knowing the entire territory is talking about you, I'd imagine, although I suspect our reasons differ. Evelyn's smile froze. A few nearby ranchers chuckled. One whispered to his companion, She's got fire, I'll give her that. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Enjoy the evening, I certainly will. She glided away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. Wade squeezed Clara's hand. That was perfect. That was terrifying. Even better. The dinner itself was an endurance test. Clara and Wade were seated at a table far from the important ranchers, a deliberate slight. The other couples at their table were polite but distant, clearly unsure how to treat the controversial newlyweds. Then the speeches started. Various ranchers stood to discuss territory business, water rights, cattle prices, railroad negotiations. Clara listened carefully, noting which men commanded respect and which were ignored. She watched how power moved through the room, how alliances formed and broke with a single word or gesture. Finally, Evelyn stood to speak. She talked about progress and prosperity, about investing in the territory's future, about strong leadership. It was a good speech, well delivered. People nodded along. Then Evelyn shifted tone. Of course, we must also be cautious about who we allow to represent us, she said smoothly. There are those who would damage our collective reputation through poor judgment and questionable associations. She didn't say Wade's name. She didn't have to. Clara felt Wade tense beside her. She put a hand on his leg under the table, a warning to stay calm. We must hold ourselves to higher standards, Evelyn continued, particularly in our personal conduct. The territory is watching, and we must show them that ranchers are not only successful businessmen, but also moral leaders. The implication was clear. Wade had failed morally by marrying Clara. Clara's blood boiled, but she kept her face neutral. When Evelyn finished to scattered applause, she returned to her seat looking triumphant. The dinner continued, Dessert was served. Coffee appeared. People started relaxing, the formal portion of the evening ending. That's when Clara stood. Wade grabbed her wrist. "What are you doing?" "Something stupid," Clara whispered back, then louder, addressing the room. "Excuse me. May I say something?" The entire dining hall went silent. Every eye turned to Clara. Evelyn's face went pale. "Mrs. Mercer, this is highly inappropriate." "I'll be brief." Clara's hands shook, but her voice stayed steady. "I know what you all think of me. The poor widow who trapped Wade Mercer into marriage. The outsider who doesn't belong. The scandal everyone whispers about." Uncomfortable shifting throughout the room. Wade stood beside her, solid and supportive. Clara continued, "I'm not going to defend myself against gossip, but I will say this. I came to Wyoming with nothing. No money, no connections, no prospects. I took a job cooking because it was the only work I could find, and I discovered something I hadn't expected. A community of people who valued hard work over pedigree. Cowboys who judged me by what I could do, not who I used to be." She could see some ranchers nodding slightly. When the flood came, those cowboys worked themselves half to death to save the herd. When supplies ran low, they went without to make sure others ate first. When we faced losing everything, they gave their own wages to help. Claire's voice strengthened. "That's the Wyoming territory I've come to know. People who help each other, who judge fairly, who understand that sometimes survival means standing together instead of tearing each other apart." Evelyn stood. "This is hardly the place—" "I'm almost finished," Clara said firmly. "I just want to ask one question. Is this association about building each other up, or is it about maintaining power by keeping others down?" The room erupted. Some ranchers started arguing with each other. Others called for order. A few applauded. It was chaos. Wade pulled Clara back down to her seat. "You just declared war on the entire social structure of the territory." "I know. That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever done. Can it be both?" Despite the chaos, Clara noticed something important. Several ranchers were watching her with new interest. Not hostility, but curiosity. She challenged Evelyn directly, something few people dared to do. And some of them looked impressed. The association president, a grizzled old rancher named McCarthy, who ran the largest spread in the territory, stood and demanded order. Eventually, the room settled. McCarthy looked directly at Clara. "Mrs. Mercer makes a fair point, though her timing's questionable." He turned to address everyone. "This association was founded on mutual support. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. Maybe it's time we remembered." Evelyn's face went red. "McCarthy, you can't possibly—" "I can, and I am." McCarthy's voice brooked no argument. "Motion to table all discussions of member conduct unless directly related to business practices. All in favor?" More than half the room voted yes. Evelyn looked like she'd been slapped. The meeting adjourned shortly after. As people filed out, several ranchers approached Wade and Clara, not to insult them, but to shake hands and quietly express support. "Took guts saying what you said," one man told Clara. "My wife will want to meet you." Another rancher pulled Wade aside. "That loan Evelyn called in? She tried the same thing with me 2 years ago. I never forgot it. You need supplies. Come to me directly. I'll extend credit." Slowly the tide was turning, but Evelyn wasn't done. As Wade and Clara were leaving, Evelyn cornered them in the hotel lobby. Her mask of civility had completely dropped. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You've made an enemy you can't afford." "We already had you as an enemy," Wade said. "Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed. I was willing to let you keep your dignity before. Now?" Evelyn stepped closer, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Now I'm going to destroy you both so completely that no one will remember you ever existed." Clara surprised herself by laughing. "You already tried that, Evelyn. It didn't work." "I was playing nice before. Not anymore." "Good," Clara said, "because so was I." Evelyn left, and Clara immediately started shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the evening crashed all at once. Wade guided her outside into the cool night air. "Breathe. I just threatened Evelyn Graves." "You did? In front of everyone?" "Yep." "Wade, what have I done?" Wade pulled her close. "You were magnificent. Terrifying, but magnificent."
Clara pressed her face against his chest. She's going to make our lives hell.
She was already doing that. At least now we're fighting back. They rode home in the wagon under a sky full of stars, neither speaking much. The enormity of what Clara had done settled over her like a heavy blanket. She'd made a stand, but at what cost? The answer came 3 days later. Evelyn filed a formal complaint with the Cattlemen's Association, claiming that Iron Hollow Ranch had violated multiple territory regulations, false charges designed to bury Wade in legal fees and investigations. She also spread a new rumor that Clara had a criminal past, that she was running from something back east. Neither claim was true, but truth didn't matter when Evelyn controlled the narrative. Wade spent entire days riding to town to deal with investigators, lawyers, and officials who all seemed to be in Evelyn's pocket. Money they didn't have drained away on legal defense. Clara watched their savings, already nearly nothing, disappear completely. "We can't keep this up," she told Wade one night. "We have to. There's nothing left to sell, no money left to pay lawyers. Wade, we're going to lose the ranch anyway." Wade slammed his fist on the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. "No, we didn't survive everything just to give up now. I'm not talking about giving up. I'm talking about being realistic." "Realistic? You want realistic?" Wade stood, pacing like a caged animal. "Realistically, Evelyn wins. She has more money, more influence, more power. She can drag this out until we're completely bankrupt. That's reality." "Then what do we do?" Wade stopped pacing. He looked at Clara with desperation in his eyes. "I don't know." It was the first time Clara had heard him admit defeat, and it scared her more than anything Evelyn had done. The breaking point came during the ranch inspection. Evelyn had convinced the association to send inspectors to verify that Iron Hollow met all territory standards, another harassment tactic. The inspectors arrived unannounced, nitpicking every detail. The barn roof needed repair. The fences weren't regulation height. The water supply was questionable. Clara followed them around, documenting their lies, but it didn't matter. They wrote up enough violations to justify shutting down the ranch entirely, pending expensive corrections. After they left, Clara found Wade in the barn, staring at nothing. "We can fix the violations," she said without conviction. "With what money?" "We'll figure something out. We always do." Wade turned to her, and the look on his face broke her heart. "Clara, maybe it's time to admit we lost." "No. We've fought as hard as we can. Sometimes fighting isn't enough." Clara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Do you remember what you told me after we paid the loan? That we'd survived floods, and Evelyn, and we'd survive whatever came next? I believed you. I need you to believe it now." "I'm tired, Clara. I'm so damn tired." "Then rest. But don't quit. Not yet." She kissed him gently. "Please." Wade closed his eyes. "What if I don't know how to keep fighting?" "Then I'll fight for both of us." That night, Clara did something she'd never done in her life. She called a meeting with the ranchers' wives. She sent word through Hazel, through the few friendly suppliers, through anyone who might listen. She invited every ranch wife in the territory to tea at Iron Hollow. Wade thought she was crazy. "These women don't like you," he pointed out. "They don't like Evelyn more. They're just scared to say it. And you think tea is going to change that?" "I think women understand being powerless, and I think some of them are tired of it." 12 women showed up, more than Clara expected. They sat in her modest parlor drinking weak tea from mismatched cups, looking uncomfortable. Clara didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know most of you think I'm scandalous or inappropriate or worse. You're entitled to your opinions. But I asked you here because I need help, and I think some of you understand what it's like to be in Evelyn Graves' crosshairs." A few women shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slightly. "Evelyn is trying to destroy my husband's ranch through false complaints and legal harassment," Clara continued. "She's doing it because Wade rejected her, because I refused to disappear quietly. But here's the thing. If she can do this to us, she can do it to anyone. Your husbands, your families, anyone who crosses her." An older woman named Margaret spoke up. "What exactly do you expect us to do?" "Talk to your husbands. Tell them what you've seen. Evelyn has power because men in this territory give it to her. But you have influence too. Use it." "That's not how things work," another woman said. "Men don't listen to their wives about business." "Then make them listen," Clara shot back. "I'm not asking you to stage a revolution. I'm asking you to plant seeds of doubt. to question why Evelyn gets away with things other people don't, to suggest, quietly, that maybe the association shouldn't be controlled by one vindictive woman. The room went silent. Then Margaret smiled. My husband thinks Evelyn walks on water, but he also thinks I'm a simple woman who only cares about knitting and recipes. Might be interesting to prove him wrong. Other women started murmuring agreement. By the time they left an hour later, Clara had a small army of allies. Not fighters exactly, but whisper campaigners who'd work quietly to undermine Evelyn's influence. It wasn't much, but it was something. Wade found her cleaning up after they'd gone. Did it work? Maybe. We'll see. Clara, even if those women help, it might not be enough. I know. She set down the teacups. But I'm not giving up. Not on this ranch. Not on us. Not on anything we've built. Wade pulled her into his arms. What did I do to deserve you? Hired a widow nobody wanted and treated her like she mattered. You've always mattered. Clara held him tight, hoping it was true, praying they'd survive whatever came next. The change started small. One rancher mentioned to Wade that he'd reconsidered some of the inspection violations and thought they were exaggerated. Another offered to loan materials for repairs at no interest, small kindnesses that added up. Then McCarthy himself showed up at Iron Hollow unannounced. Need to talk, he said without preamble. Wade invited him into the office. Clara made coffee and pretended not to listen from the kitchen. I've been hearing things, McCarthy said, about Evelyn's complaint, about the inspections. And I've been looking into her other business dealings. Find anything interesting? Wade asked. Depends on your definition of interesting. Turns out you're not the first person she's targeted with legal harassment. There's a pattern. She loans money, waits for trouble, then uses technicalities to seize property. Wade's jaw clenched. Can you prove it? That's the problem. Everything she does is technically legal. Immoral as hell, but legal. McCarthy sipped his coffee. However, the association has some discretion in how we handle member complaints, and I'm inclined to dismiss most of these violations as inspector overreach. Hope flickered in Wade's chest. Why are you helping us? McCarthy smiled grimly. Because your wife had the guts to say what everyone's been thinking for years. Evelyn's gotten too powerful, too controlling. Someone needs to push back. Might as well be now. The violations were dismissed 2 days later. Evelyn was furious, but without the violations, she had no legal grounds to continue her harassment. The association made it clear they wouldn't entertain further complaints without substantial evidence. For the first time in months, Wade and Clara could breathe. But victory came with a price. Evelyn's social influence remained strong, and she made sure Wade and Clara were excluded from every major territory event. Suppliers still charged them higher prices. People still whispered. They'd won the battle, but not the war. Still, something had shifted. The ranch stabilized. Spring turned to summer, and the herd grew. Money was tight, but they weren't starving. The crew stayed loyal, working hard through brutal heat and occasional storms. And Wade and Clara's marriage, born from desperation and survival, slowly transformed into something real. They fought sometimes. Clara thought Wade was too proud to ask for help. Wade thought Clara worked herself too hard. But they also laughed, shared quiet mornings over coffee, and found moments of peace in the chaos. One evening, Clara was finishing dishes when Wade appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Come outside," he said. "I'm not done. Dishes can wait." He led her to the porch where a wooden sign leaned against the railing, freshly carved, carefully painted. Iron Hollow Ranch. W. Mercer and C. Mercer, proprietors. Clara stared at her name carved into the wood, tears blurring her vision. "You're not just the cook," Wade said quietly. "You're not just my wife. You're my partner. Equal in everything. I wanted it official." Clara turned and kissed him hard, pouring every emotion she couldn't voice into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, she was definitely crying. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." They stood on that porch watching the sun set over land they'd fought to keep, holding each other like they'd never let go. And for the first time in her entire life, Clara Bennett Mercer felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The sign hung above the ranch entrance for exactly 3 days before someone shot a hole through it. Clara heard the gunfire from the kitchen and ran outside to find Wade staring at the splintered wood, his face dark with rage. The bullet had gone straight through the C in her name. "Evelyn," Wade said through clenched teeth. "You don't know that," Clara replied, though she absolutely knew that. "Who else would—" Wade stopped, forcing himself to breathe. "She can't let it go. Can't stand that we're still here." Samuel rode up, having heard the shot. He looked at the sign and spat in the dust. "Want me to post guards?" "No," Clara said before Wade could answer. "That's what she wants, for us to act scared, to live like we're under siege." Wade turned to her. "Someone just shot at our property, Clara. Someone shot at a piece of wood. Nobody's hurt." She touched his arm. "We fix the sign and we move on. We don't give her the satisfaction of knowing it bothered us." Wade looked like he wanted to argue, but Samuel nodded slowly. "Mrs. Mercer's right. We start acting paranoid, the crew gets nervous. Better to show we're not rattled." That afternoon, Wade carved a new sign. This time he made two, one to hang, one to keep in the barn as a spare. Clara didn't comment on the precaution. But the incident marked a shift. Evelyn's attacks became more subtle, more insidious. Supplies would go missing from deliveries. Fences would be found cut in the middle of the night. Small fires started in places they shouldn't. Nothing provable, nothing that could be traced directly back to her, but everyone knew. The crew started sleeping in shifts, keeping watch. The ranch became a fortress, even though Clara hated admitting it. "This can't keep going," she told Wade one night. "I know. So what do we do?" Wade stared at the ceiling. "I've been thinking about the railroad contract." Clara propped herself up on one elbow. "What railroad contract?" "The Northern Pacific is expanding through the territory next year. They'll need beef to feed construction crews. It's a huge contract. 6 months of steady sales at premium prices." Wade turned to look at her. "Enough to set us up for years if we can land it." "And you think we can?" "I think we're one of the few ranches with enough cattle and the infrastructure to handle it. But we'd need to drive the herd to the railroad depot in Cheyenne. 200 head, 70 miles through rough country." Clara's stomach tightened. Cattle drives were dangerous even in good conditions. Men died. Animals were lost. And with Evelyn working against them, the risks multiplied. "When would this happen?" she asked. "Contract bids are due next month. If we win, the drive would be in 6 weeks. "You're serious about this?" Wade sat up. "It's the only way I see us getting ahead instead of just surviving. That money would let us expand the herd, repair everything properly. Maybe even save enough that the next time Evelyn tries something, we're not one disaster away from losing everything." Clara understood the logic. She also understood that Wade would be gone for weeks, leaving her to run the ranch alone while Evelyn circled like a vulture. "Do it," she said. "Submit the bid." Wade pulled her close. "You sure?" "No, but do it anyway." The bid went in the next morning. Wade spent the following week preparing, checking the herd, planning routes, calculating supplies. The crew sensed something big was happening and worked with renewed energy. Then McCarthy rode out to Iron Hollow with news that changed everything. "You got competition for that railroad contract," he said without preamble. Wade's jaw tightened. "Who?" "Evelyn Graves. She submitted a bid using cattle from 3 smaller ranches she controls. She doesn't know the first thing about running a cattle drive. Doesn't matter, she's got the numbers, and she's underbidding you by 15%. McCarthy shook his head. "Railroad's going to take the cheaper option unless you can prove you're worth the extra cost." Wade slammed his fist on the table. "This is insane. She's doing this just to hurt us." "Of course she is. But it's legal, and the railroad doesn't care about territory politics. They want beef delivered on time and on budget." After McCarthy left, Wade paced the office like a caged animal. Clara watched him, mind racing through possibilities. "Can we match her bid?" she asked. "Not without losing money on the deal. We'd basically be working for free." "Then we don't match her bid. We prove we're better." Wade stopped pacing. "How?" Clara thought about every business deal she'd watched her husband make, every negotiation she'd witnessed in 20 years of marriage. The railroad doesn't just want cheap beef. They want reliability. Evelyn's never run a cattle drive in her life. But you have. Multiple times. We emphasize experience, track record, guaranteed delivery. That might not be enough. Then we sweeten the deal another way. What if we offer something Evelyn can't? Clara's mind worked faster now. The railroad needs consistent supply for 6 months. What if we guarantee to maintain a herd near the depot? Fresh beef delivered weekly instead of all at once. Wade considered this. That would mean keeping crew in Cheyenne long term, extra costs, more logistics. But it's value Evelyn can't provide. She doesn't have the infrastructure or the experience. A slow smile spread across Wade's face. You're good at this. I learned from watching my husband try to cheat at poker. I never cheated. You absolutely cheated. Wade pulled her into a kiss. Help me rewrite this proposal? They spent 3 days crafting a revised bid that emphasized Iron Hollow's reliability, Wade's experience, and the added value of consistent weekly delivery. It was more expensive than Evelyn's bid, but it was also more comprehensive. The railroad took 2 weeks to decide. During that time, Clara felt like she was holding her breath underwater. Every day brought new anxiety. What if they lost? What if Evelyn won? What if this was their last chance and they blew it? Wade tried to stay confident, but Clara saw the fear in his eyes. The answer came via telegram. Contract awarded to Iron Hollow Ranch. Wade read it 3 times before he believed it. Then he grabbed Clara and spun her around, both of them laughing like idiots. We did it, he said. We actually did it. You did it. We did it, Wade insisted. Your idea about weekly deliveries is what sealed it. The crew celebrated that night with whiskey and terrible singing. Clara cooked an enormous meal that everyone devoured. For the first time in months, the ranch felt victorious instead of just surviving. But reality set in the next morning. Wade had 6 weeks to prepare for a cattle drive that would determine Iron Hollow's future. If they succeeded, the ranch would be secure for years. If they failed, if they lost too many cattle or missed the deadline or couldn't deliver the promised quality, they'd lose everything. No pressure. The preparation consumed everyone. Wade and Samuel selected the best 200 head from the herd. Other crew members repaired equipment, checked horses, planned routes. They studied weather patterns and water sources. Every detail mattered. Clara managed the ranch side, maintaining the remaining herd, keeping the household running, handling suppliers. It was overwhelming, but she'd learned to work through overwhelming. What she hadn't prepared for was the fear. 3 weeks before the drive, Wade came to bed late and found Clara still awake. Can't sleep? He asked. Thinking. Wade lay down beside her. About? About you being gone for 2 weeks. About everything that could go wrong. About Evelyn taking advantage while you're away. Hazel will be here. So will the crew we're leaving behind. I know, but it's not the same. Clara turned to face him. I'm scared, Wade. He pulled her close. Me too. You're scared? Terrified. This drive is everything. If I screw it up, you won't. You don't know that. Weather could turn, cattle could stampede, we could lose half the herd to disease or thieves or pure bad luck. Wade's voice was tight. And if that happens, we're done. No second chances. Clara realized they'd both been carrying this fear alone, trying to be strong for each other. It was exhausting. Then we're both terrified, she said quietly. Together. Wade kissed her forehead. Together. They fell asleep holding each other, drawing strength from proximity if nothing else. The day of departure arrived too quickly. Wade and 15 crew members would take the cattle while 6 hands stayed behind to maintain the ranch. Clara stood in the yard watching them prepare, her stomach in knots. Samuel approached her. We'll bring him back safe, ma'am. You better. I've gotten used to having him around. Samuel smiled. He's gotten used to you too. Talks about you constantly. Drives the men crazy. Good. Let him annoy you instead of me for a while. But when Wade came to say goodbye, Clara's composure cracked. She grabbed his shirt and held on tight. Come back, she whispered. Always. Wade kissed her hard. 2 weeks, maybe 3, if weather slows us down. You can handle this place. I know I can. That's not what I'm worried about. Wade pulled back to look at her. Then what? I'm worried about losing you. About something happening out there and me never seeing you again. About... Her voice broke. Wade cupped her face. Hey, I survived a war and everything Evelyn's thrown at us. I'm not dying on a cattle drive. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep it from happening. He kissed her again, gentler this time. I love you, Clara Mercer, and I'm coming back to you. Clara watched them leave, 200 cattle moving like a slow-motion avalanche across the valley, dust rising in clouds that took hours to settle. She stood there long after they disappeared over the ridge, feeling hollow. Hazel appeared beside her. First time is always hardest. Has it gotten easier for you? Hazel had been married to a cowboy who died on a drive 15 years ago. She snorted. No, but you learn to function through the fear. That's comforting. Wasn't meant to be comforting. Was meant to be honest. Hazel squeezed Clara's shoulder. Come on, we've got work to do. The first week passed in a blur of exhausting work. Clara managed the remaining cattle, handled supplier negotiations, cooked for the skeleton crew, and dealt with 1,000 small crises. A fence broke. 3 chickens got sick. The well pump needed repair. She fell into bed each night too tired to worry, which was probably a blessing. The second week brought Evelyn. Clara was in town buying supplies when Evelyn's carriage pulled up beside her wagon. Clara, how pleasant to see you. Evelyn's smile was poison. I heard Wade left on the railroad drive. Such a big responsibility. I hope nothing goes wrong. Clara kept loading supplies. I'm sure it'll be fine. Of course. Although cattle drives are so unpredictable, stampedes, disease, theft, any number of disasters could occur. Evelyn leaned closer. Especially when certain people have reason to ensure failure. Clara's blood went cold. Are you threatening my husband? Threatening? Goodness, no. Merely observing that accidents happen. Evelyn's eyes glittered, particularly to people who've made powerful enemies. Clara dropped the sack she was holding and stepped close enough to see her own reflection in Evelyn's eyes. If anything happens to Wade or that cattle drive, I will destroy you. Not legally, not politically. I will burn down everything you've built and salt the earth where it stood. Do you understand me? Evelyn actually looked startled. You can't. Try me. Clara's voice was deadly calm. You've underestimated me from the beginning. Don't make that mistake again. She climbed into her wagon and drove away, leaving Evelyn standing in the street looking shaken. Clara's hands didn't stop trembling until she was miles from town. Had she just made things worse? Probably. Did she regret it? Not even a little. But Evelyn's words haunted her. Had she actually arranged something, or was she just trying to scare Clara? 2 days later, a rider arrived from Cheyenne with a message. Major storm hit the drive. Multiple cattle lost. Wade injured. Clara's world tilted. How bad? She demanded. The rider looked uncomfortable. Don't know, ma'am. Message just said injured and to stand by for updates. Injured could mean anything. A broken arm, a goring, trampled by stampeding cattle. Dead, but they didn't want to say it in a telegram. Clara's mind spiraled through every horrible possibility. Hazel found her in the kitchen an hour later, staring at nothing. You okay? Hazel asked. No. Clara's voice sounded hollow. He's hurt and I don't know how bad and I can't do anything about it. Can you ride to Cheyenne? Not without abandoning the ranch. And even if I could, by the time I got there, the drive would have moved on. Clara pressed her hands against her eyes. I'm just supposed to sit here and wait. That's the worst part of loving someone who does dangerous work. The waiting. Hazel sat down across from her. But Wade's tough. Whatever happened, he'll survive it. You don't know that. No, but I choose to believe it anyway. So do you. Clara wanted to believe, but fear had its claws in deep. 3 more days passed with no word. Clara functioned on autopilot, cooking, working, managing, but inside she was falling apart. Then another rider arrived. Clara ran outside before he'd even dismounted. Tell me. Drive's back on schedule, ma'am. Storm scattered the herd, but they rounded up most. Mr. Mercer took a bad fall during the stampede, broke some ribs, and dislocated his shoulder. But he's riding again, stubborn as a mule, according to Samuel. Relief hit Clara so hard her knees buckled. He's alive. Yes, ma'am. Banged up, but alive. They expect to reach the depot in 4 days. After the rider left, Clara sat on the porch steps and cried. Relief, exhaustion, and residual terror all poured out at once. Hazel sat beside her, not saying anything, just being present. I hate this, Clara said through tears. I know. How did you survive 15 years of this? Badly, Hazel admitted. And when my husband died, I swore I'd never care about anyone like that again. Hurts too much. Clara wiped her eyes. But you stayed in ranching. Because I'm an idiot who can't let go. Hazel smiled sadly. And because sometimes the good parts are worth the terror. The final 4 days crawled by. Clara imagined every possible disaster. Wade's injuries worsening, another storm, cattle theft, Evelyn's interference materializing into something real. But no more bad news came. On the 13th day since Wade left, Clara woke before dawn and just knew, that today was the day. She was right. Wade rode into Iron Hollow Ranch around noon, exhausted, bruised, moving like every part of him hurt, but alive. Clara ran to him. Wade dismounted carefully, wincing, and caught her in his good arm. "Miss me?" he asked. Clara punched his uninjured shoulder. "You broke your ribs and didn't tell me how bad it was." "Didn't want you to worry." "I worried anyway, you idiot." Wade kissed her, and Clara tasted dust and exhaustion and relief. When they finally broke apart, she noticed the rest of the crew watching with varying degrees of amusement. "We made it," Samuel announced. "Delivered 193 head. Lost 7 in the storm, but the railroad accepted the count. Payment secured." The crew erupted in cheers. They'd done it. Against everything, the weather, the stampede, Wade's injury, they'd delivered. That night, despite his injuries, Wade insisted on celebrating with the crew. Clara made him sit down while she served food, shooting him warning looks every time he tried to help. Later, alone in their room, Clara helped Wade undress carefully. The bruises across his ribs were spectacular, purple and black and angry looking. "How bad does it hurt?" she asked. "Like I got kicked by a horse and then trampled by cattle." "So pretty accurate, actually." Wade winced as he lay down. "Worth it, though." "Was it? Really?" Wade reached for her hand. "We're secure for the first time since I started this ranch. We got money to expand, to hire more crew, to finally stop scrambling. Yeah, it was worth it." Clara traced the bruises gently. "I thought I lost you. Can't get rid of me that easy." "Wade, I'm serious." When that message came saying you were injured, her voice caught. "I've lost people before, but losing you would destroy me." Wade pulled her down beside him, carefully arranging them so nothing pressed on his injuries. "You're not going to lose me. I'm too stubborn to die, and you're too mean to let me." Clara laughed despite herself. "I'm not mean. You threatened to burn down Evelyn's entire life. She deserved it." Not arguing. Wade kissed her head. "But yeah, you're definitely mean when you need to be. It's one of the things I love about you." They lay together in the darkness, Clara listening to Wade's heartbeat, reassuring herself that he was real and alive and here. The railroad money changed everything. Wade hired 4 new hands, expanding the crew. They repaired buildings that had been falling apart for years, bought new equipment, expanded the herd. Iron Hollow Ranch went from surviving to thriving. But success brought new problems. Other ranchers started watching Iron Hollow with envious eyes. Suppliers who'd ignored them suddenly wanted their business. And Evelyn watched it all with barely contained rage. She'd tried to destroy them and failed. She'd tried to sabotage the railroad contract and failed. Every move she made backfired. Clara should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt nervous. Cornered animals were dangerous, and Evelyn was definitely cornered. The confrontation came during the Fall Cattlemen's Association meeting. Clara attended with Wade, still not entirely comfortable in these settings, but refusing to hide anymore. The meeting covered typical business: water rights, territory regulations, upcoming elections. Then Evelyn stood during open comments. "I'd like to raise a concern about Iron Hollow Ranch," she said smoothly. The room went silent. Wade tensed beside Clara. "What concern?" McCarthy asked warily. "There are questions about how they secured the railroad contract, specifically whether proper bidding procedures were followed." Evelyn's smile was venomous. "I believe a formal investigation is warranted." Wade stood. "That's a baseless accusation." "Is it? You underbid in my offer significantly. Some might wonder if special considerations were given." "The railroad chose us based on merit and experience," Wade said flatly. "Everything was documented and above board." "Then you shouldn't mind an investigation proving that," McCarthy cut in. "Mrs. Graves, this is inappropriate. If you have evidence of wrongdoing, present it. Otherwise, I'm simply asking for transparency. Evelyn looked around the room. Surely we all want to ensure association members are operating ethically? It was a trap. If they opposed the investigation, it looked like they had something to hide. If they agreed, Evelyn would drag them through months of scrutiny looking for any technicality to exploit. Clara stood before Wade could respond. You want transparency, Evelyn? Let's talk about transparency. Clara's voice carried across the room. Let's investigate how many ranches you've acquired through predatory loans. Let's examine every contract you've interfered with. Let's discuss the accidents and sabotage that conveniently happened to your competitors. Evelyn's face went pale. How dare you? I dare because I'm tired of your games. You've tried to destroy my husband's ranch because he rejected you. You've harassed us, spread lies about us, and done everything possible to ruin us. And when none of it worked, you're trying legal manipulation. Clara stepped forward. But here's what you didn't count on. We're still standing, and we're not going anywhere. The room erupted in whispers. Several ranchers looked uncomfortable. Others nodded slightly. McCarthy stood. I think we've heard enough accusations for one meeting. Unless Mrs. Graves has actual evidence of wrongdoing, which I note she hasn't presented, I'm dismissing this complaint. This isn't over, Evelyn hissed. Yeah, it is, Clara said. You lost, Evelyn. Accept it and move on. Evelyn left without another word. Her composure finally shattered. After the meeting, several ranchers approached Wade and Clara with quiet support. Even McCarthy pulled them aside. Your wife is terrifying, he told Wade. I know, it's great. Clara smiled sweetly. I prefer determined. Call it what you want, but you've made a powerful enemy. She was already my enemy. At least now she knows I'm hers too. Riding home that night, Wade kept glancing at Clara. What? She finally asked. Just wondering when you became so fierce. Around the time I realized I had something worth fighting for. Wade reached over and took her hand. I love you. You know that? I know. I love you too. Even when I'm broken-ribbed and useless? Especially then. Someone has to keep you from doing something stupid. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, partners in every way that mattered. Winter came, and with it, peace. Evelyn seemed to retreat, licking her wounds. The ranch ran smoothly. The crew worked hard, but no longer desperately. For the first time, Clara could breathe without waiting for disaster. Then, 2 weeks before Christmas, Clara realized she'd missed her monthly bleeding. At 42, she'd assumed that part of her life was over. Her body had been through too much, lived too hard. Pregnancy seemed impossible. But the signs were unmistakable. She told Hazel first, needing someone to confirm she wasn't imagining things. Hazel examined her and smiled. You're definitely pregnant. Clara sat down hard. I don't understand. I'm too old. Apparently not. Hazel's eyes were kind. How do you feel about it? Terrified, excited, confused. Clara pressed a hand to her still flat stomach. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't? What if everything goes right? Hazel interrupted. Clara, you've survived everything life threw at you. You'll survive this too. Telling Wade was harder. She found him in the barn, checking on a pregnant mare. The irony wasn't lost on her. Wade, I need to tell you something. He looked up, instantly concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I'm just... Clara took a breath. I'm pregnant. Wade stared at her. What? I'm pregnant. I know we never discussed it. I know I'm probably too old and this is terrifying and... Wade crossed the distance between them and kissed her so hard it stopped her rambling. When he pulled back, he was smiling wider than Clara had ever seen. We're having a baby? He asked. Apparently. Clara, that's... He stopped, looking overwhelmed. Are you okay with this? I think so. Are you? Wade pulled her into a careful hug. I'm terrified and thrilled and completely unprepared. So yeah, I'm great. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the reality sank in. That night, they told the crew. The reaction was instantaneous, whooping, congratulations, and immediate arguments about who would teach the baby to ride first. Travis, now completely reformed, actually teared up. A baby at Iron Hollow. Never thought I'd see the day. Samuel raised his glass. To the future of this ranch. Everyone drank, and Clara felt something she'd never experienced before: complete, overwhelming joy. The pregnancy was harder than Clara expected. Morning sickness lasted all day. Her back ached constantly. She was exhausted. But Wade was relentlessly supportive. He took over the heavy kitchen work, made sure she rested, worried constantly that she was doing too much. "I'm pregnant, not dying," Clara told him for the 100th time. "I know, but you're also 42 and working yourself too hard." "I've always worked hard." "Now you're working for two." Clara couldn't argue with that logic. The ranch rallied around her. The crew took on extra work without complaint. Hazel monitored her health obsessively. Even the ranchers' wives, who'd once avoided her, started visiting with advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Clara realized she'd built something she'd never had before: community. Word eventually reached Evelyn, who sent a perfunctory congratulations note that dripped with insincerity. Clara threw it in the fire. "She can't even let us have this," Wade said bitterly. "Let her stew. We've got more important things to worry about." Spring came, and with it, Clara's belly grew. She moved slower now, waddling more than walking. The baby kicked constantly, especially at night when Clara was trying to sleep. Wade would press his hand against her stomach, feeling the movements, looking awestruck every time. "Still can't believe it," he'd say. "Tell that to my bladder. The baby seems very determined to use it as a punching bag." One evening, Clara was cooking supper when a sharp pain doubled her over. She grabbed the counter, gasping. Wade was beside her instantly. "What's wrong?" "I don't—" Another pain, sharper. "The baby." Wade went pale. "It's too early." "I know." Clara breathed through the pain. "Get Hazel, now." The next 12 hours were the longest of Clara's life. The baby was coming early, too early. Pain came in waves that left her gasping. Hazel worked calmly, but Clara could see the worry in her eyes. Wade paced outside the room, forbidden from entering but refusing to leave. Finally, as dawn broke, Clara heard the most beautiful sound in the world: a baby crying. "It's a girl," Hazel said, tears streaming down her face. "Small, but breathing strong." She placed the tiny baby in Clara's arms, and Clara's heart simply stopped. This impossibly small person, wrinkled and red-faced and perfect, was hers. Wade burst into the room, having heard the cry. He stopped dead at the sight of Clara holding their daughter. "She's early," Hazel warned. "We'll need to watch her carefully, but she's a fighter." Wade approached slowly, like he was afraid to disturb something sacred. He touched the baby's impossibly small hand, and she gripped his finger. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She looks like a tiny, angry potato," Clara said, laughing through tears. "The most perfect potato I've ever seen." They named her Eleanor after Wade's mother. The crew took turns visiting, each hardened cowboy turning into a sentimental mess at the sight of her. Samuel cried openly. Travis carved a tiny wooden horse. The entire ranch transformed into baby protection mode. Eleanor was small but determined. She ate well, cried loud, and grew stronger every day. Clara had never been so exhausted or so happy in her entire life. One night, nursing Eleanor while Wade slept beside them, Clara thought about everything that had led to this moment. The widow who arrived with nothing but a trunk and a skillet. The harsh ranch that became home. The love she'd never expected to find. The baby she'd thought was impossible. She'd come to Wyoming broken and convinced she was worthless. Now she was whole. Eleanor made a small sound, and Clara adjusted her position. Outside, the Wyoming wind howled, but inside everything was warm and safe and exactly right. Clara looked down at her daughter's perfect face and whispered, "You're going to be so loved." And she meant it with every fiber of her being. Eleanor was 3 months old when she smiled for the first time, and Wade cried like he'd been kicked in the chest. Clara found him in the nursery at 2 a.m, holding their daughter and staring at her like she might disappear if he blinked. "You okay?" Clara asked from the doorway. Wade looked up, his eyes wet. "She smiled at me, just now. A real smile, not gas." Clara moved closer, peering at Eleanor's sleeping face. "She's asleep now." "I know, but she smiled first." Wade's voice was rough with emotion. "I spent so many years convinced I'd ruined my chance at anything good, that the war had broken me too badly to deserve this. And then you showed up. And now her." He touched Eleanor's tiny hand. I don't know what I did to earn this, but I'm terrified of losing it. Clara sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. You're not going to lose us. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what we do. Wade kissed Eleanor's forehead, then Clara's. They sat like that in the darkness, a small family carved out of hardship and stubbornness, holding on to each other like lifelines. The ranch flourished that summer. The herd grew strong. The crew worked with the easy efficiency of men who knew their jobs and trusted their bosses. Money wasn't abundant, but it was steady. For the first time since Wade started Iron Hollow, they weren't one disaster away from collapse. Clara managed the household and the baby with Hazel's help, though managed was generous. Most days felt like controlled chaos. Eleanor had strong opinions about everything: sleep schedules, eating times, who was allowed to hold her. She was loud, demanding, and completely adored by every person on the ranch. Travis built her a cradle so elaborate it had carved horses on every side. Samuel taught her nonsense songs. Even the gruffest cowboys turned into cooing idiots the second Eleanor looked at them. She's going to be spoiled rotten, Clara told Wade. Good. She deserves it. She deserves to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her. Wade grinned. She's 3 months old. Let her think the world revolves around her for a while. Clara couldn't argue with that logic. But peace never lasted long in Wyoming territory. The trouble started when a new rancher named William Hartford bought land adjacent to Iron Hollow. Hartford was young, ambitious, and had money from family back east. He arrived with big plans to modernize ranching, new breeding techniques, imported cattle, aggressive expansion. Wade met him at a Cattlemen's Association meeting and came home looking troubled. What's wrong? Clara asked. Hartford wants to buy our northern pasture, the one bordering his property. Clara frowned. That's some of our best grazing land. I know. I told him it's not for sale. He offered twice what it's worth. And? And when I still said no, he smiled like he expected that answer and said he'd make it worth my while eventually. Wade poured himself coffee. Something about him feels wrong. Clara trusted Wade's instincts. They'd kept him alive through war and ranching both. Over the next month, Hartford made his intentions clear. He started buying up smaller ranches around Iron Hollow, paying premium prices that desperate owners couldn't refuse. He hired aggressive crews who pushed boundaries, literal boundaries, moving fence lines in the night, grazing cattle on disputed land. Other ranchers complained, but Hartford had money and lawyers. Every confrontation ended in his favor. He's trying to squeeze us out, Samuel said during a crew meeting. Buy up everything around us until we're landlocked and have to sell. Wade's jaw tightened. We're not selling. He's got resources we don't, boss. Money, connections, legal help. We've got something better. We've got people who give a damn about this place. It was a nice sentiment, but Clara worried it wouldn't be enough. Her worries intensified when Hartford showed up at Iron Hollow uninvited. Clara was in the garden with Eleanor strapped to her chest when an expensive buggy rolled up. Hartford stepped out, tall, handsome in a polished way, wearing clothes too nice for ranch country. Mrs. Mercer, he said smoothly. William Hartford. I don't believe we've met. Clara stood, instinctively protective. My husband mentioned you. All good things, I hope. Hartford's smile was practiced. I was hoping to speak with Wade. He's working. Won't be back until evening. Perhaps I could wait. Hartford glanced around like he was cataloging every building, every fence post. Or better yet, perhaps you could deliver a message. Clara didn't like his tone, that assumption that she'd just carry messages like she didn't matter beyond that. Depends on the message. Tell Wade I'm prepared to offer 3 times market value for the northern pasture. That's more than generous. We're not selling. Hartford's smile thinned. Mrs. Mercer, I understand attachment to property, but business is business. That pasture is more valuable to me than to you. I'm offering a fortune for land you don't strictly need. You've got no idea what we need. I know you have a child now. Hartford's eyes flicked to Eleanor. Children are expensive, risky too out here. Wouldn't it be better to have financial security? To not worry constantly about whether the ranch will survive another bad winter or drought? It was a threat disguised as concern, and Clara saw right through it. Mr. Hartford, I'm going to say this once. That land isn't for sale. Not at any price. Not now, not ever. And if you threaten my family again, even subtly, you'll regret it. Hartford's mask slipped slightly, showing irritation underneath. I'm trying to be reasonable. Then be reasonable somewhere else. You're not welcome here. She walked toward the house without looking back. Her hands shook, but she didn't let him see. When Wade came home, Clara told him everything. His face went dark. He threatened Eleanor? Not directly, but the implication was clear. Wade stood abruptly. I'm going to his ranch. Wade, don't. That's what he wants. You to do something rash that makes you look bad. I don't care how I look. He threatened our daughter. Clara grabbed his arm. Then we beat him smart, not angry. We figure out what he really wants and use it against him. Wade forced himself to breathe. What does he want? Control, power, to prove he's smarter than everyone else. Clara thought hard. Men like him can't stand being outmaneuvered, so we outmaneuver him. They spent the next week gathering information. Samuel talked to Hartford's crew and learned that Hartford had overpaid for most of his acquisitions. He had money now, but was burning through it fast. Other ranchers quietly admitted Hartford had pressured them with similar tactics. The picture emerged. Hartford was overextended, betting everything on consolidating enough land to become the dominant rancher in the territory. If he failed, he'd lose everything. He needs our land to make his plan work, Wade realized. Without it, he's got scattered parcels that don't connect properly. Clara smiled grimly. Then we make sure he doesn't get it. The showdown came at the next Cattlemen's Association meeting. Hartford stood during open discussion. I'd like to propose new regulations regarding land consolidation and modern ranching practices. The territory is growing, and we need to adapt. What followed was 30 minutes of Hartford essentially arguing that bigger operations should have priority over smaller family ranches, that modernization was necessary, that traditional methods were outdated. It was a transparent attempt to legitimize his land grab. When he finished, several ranchers looked uncomfortable. Hartford had money and confidence, and that swayed people. Then Clara stood. Wade tried to pull her back down, but she shook him off. Mrs. Mercer, McCarthy said carefully, you have something to add? I do. Mr. Hartford talks about modernization and progress. But what he's really describing is monopoly. He wants to change regulations so that wealthy outsiders can buy up family ranches and consolidate power. Clara looked directly at Hartford. That's not progress. That's greed. Hartford's smile was condescending. Mrs. Mercer, I understand this is complicated, but business requires vision that, Don't patronize me, Clara interrupted. I might not have your education or your family money, but I understand exactly what you're doing. You're trying to manipulate this association into helping you corner the market. That's ridiculous, is it? You've bought 6 ranches in 4 months, all at inflated prices. You've pressured owners to sell through intimidation and legal harassment. You showed up at my home and threatened my family because we won't sell to you. Clara's voice strengthened. That's not vision, that's bullying. The room erupted in whispers. Hartford's face flushed red. I never threatened anyone. You told me my daughter would be safer if we had more financial security. You implied that ranching was too dangerous for families. That was a threat, and everyone here knows it. Several ranchers who'd felt Hartford's pressure nodded. The tide was turning. McCarthy stood. Mr. Hartford, is this true? I was merely having a conversation. Did you or did you not suggest that Mrs. Mercer's child was at risk? McCarthy's voice was hard. Hartford's lawyer-smooth facade cracked. I may have mentioned that children require financial stability. That's a yes. McCarthy looked around the room. I've heard similar complaints from other members. Hartford, you're new here, so let me explain how things work. We don't threaten families. We don't manipulate regulations for personal gain. And we sure as hell don't try to run roughshod over people who've been working this land for decades. This is absurd. I've done nothing illegal. Legal and right aren't always the same thing, an older rancher called out. You might want to learn the difference. The meeting ended with Hartford's proposals rejected and his reputation damaged. He left furious, and Clara knew this wasn't over. She was right. 2 weeks later, someone cut Iron Hollow's fences and scattered cattle across Hartford's land. Hartford claimed the cattle were trespassing and impounded them, demanding fees to return them. It was blatant theft disguised as law enforcement. Wade was ready to ride over and start a shooting war, but Clara stopped him. That's exactly what he wants. You start violence, he calls the territorial marshal, and suddenly we're the criminals. So what do we do? Clara thought for a moment. We call his bluff, publicly. The next morning, Clara rode into town alone and went straight to the newspaper office. The editor, a man named Thompson, who'd always been neutral regarding the Mercer Graves Hartford drama, looked surprised to see her. Mrs. Mercer, what can I do for you? I want to buy advertisement space. Front page. Thompson raised an eyebrow. That's expensive. Clara placed money on the desk. Money they couldn't afford to spend, but this was necessary. I want to publish an open letter describing what Hartford's been doing. The pressure tactics, the fence cutting, the cattle theft, everything. That's libel if you can't prove it. I can prove all of it. I've got witnesses, dates, documentation. Clara pulled out papers Hazel had helped her organize. And I'll sign my name to it. If Hartford wants to sue me, he's welcome to try. Thompson read through the documents, his expression growing more interested. This is quite a story. It's the truth, and I'm betting other ranchers have similar stories they've been too scared to tell. You're poking a hornet's nest, Mrs. Mercer. Good. Maybe it's time someone did. The letter ran the next week, front page, with Clara's signature at the bottom. It detailed every pressure tactic, every threat, every underhanded move Hartford had made since arriving in the territory. The response was immediate. 3 other ranchers came forward with their own stories. The territorial marshal launched an investigation. Hartford's lawyers scrambled to contain the damage, but Clara had been careful. Everything in the letter was provably true. Hartford showed up at Iron Hollow 2 days later, alone, looking nothing like the polished businessman who'd arrived months ago. Wade met him at the property line, rifle in hand. Clara stood on the porch with Eleanor, watching. You've destroyed me, Hartford said flatly. You destroyed yourself, Wade replied. We just made sure everyone knew about it. I offered you a fortune for that land. We don't want your fortune. We want you to leave us alone. Hartford looked toward the house, toward Clara. She did this. Your wife. Yeah, she's something, isn't she? For a long moment, Hartford just stood there. Then he laughed, a bitter, defeated sound. I underestimated you both. That was my mistake. One of many. Hartford left without another word. Within a month, he'd sold off most of his holdings and disappeared back east. The scattered ranches he'd bought were purchased by local families who'd actually worked the land. The threat was over. That night, Wade found Clara in the nursery, rocking Eleanor to sleep. You just ran off the richest man in the territory, he said quietly. We ran him off. No, that was you. I would have just punched him and made everything worse. Wade sat beside them. You're scary when you're protecting our family. Good. Maybe people will stop underestimating us. Wade kissed her temple. I love you. I love you too. Eleanor made a small sound and they both looked down at her. She was almost 6 months old now, growing fast, more aware every day. She's going to grow up knowing she's safe, Wade said. That's because of you. That's because of us, Clara corrected. We do this together, remember? Together? The years passed in that particular way time has on a ranch, simultaneously crawling and flying. Eleanor grew from a baby into a toddler who terrorized the crew with endless energy and zero fear. She learned to walk by following cowboys around, mimicking their swagger. Her first word was horse, which made Wade unbearably proud. The ranch prospered, the herd grew, they hired more crew, built new structures, expanded operations. Money was never abundant, but it was enough. More importantly, it was earned honestly. Evelyn Graves remained a presence in the territory, but her power had diminished. The other ranchers no longer feared her the way they once had. She still attended association meetings, still threw parties, still tried to control everything around her. But people had learned they could say no. Clara saw her occasionally in town. They never spoke, but Evelyn would look at Clara with undisguised hatred. Hatred for the woman who'd refused to be destroyed, who'd built something real while Evelyn's empire of fear crumbled. Clara didn't gloat. She just lived her life and let that be enough. When Eleanor turned 3, the ranch threw a party that became legendary. Every rancher family in the territory attended. Cowboys competed in ridiculous games Eleanor judged with toddler ruthlessness. Clara cooked for 2 days straight, feeding what felt like half of Wyoming. Watching Eleanor run through the crowd, Laughing and fearless, Clara felt something close to complete happiness. Wade found her during the chaos. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how different everything is from when I arrived. I was so scared then, convinced I was too old, too broken, too everything wrong to deserve anything good." Wade pulled her close. "And now? Now I know that was bullshit. I wasn't broken. I was just surviving the wrong life." Clara looked up at him. "This is the right one." "Damn right it is." Eleanor crashed into them, demanding Wade push her on the swing Samuel had built. Wade scooped her up, and Clara watched them go, her husband and daughter, her family, her home. That evening, after everyone left and Eleanor was asleep, Clara and Wade sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. "McCarthy's retiring next year," Wade said. "He wants me to run for association president." Clara turned to look at him. "Are you going to?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether my wife thinks she can handle being married to someone with that much responsibility." Clara laughed. "Wade, I helped run off Evelyn Graves and William Hartford. I think I can handle the Cattlemen's Association." "So that's a yes?" "That's a yes." Wade became association president the following year, and Clara became his unofficial but very real partner in managing it. Together, they pushed through reforms that protected small ranchers, prevented predatory lending, and established fair trading practices. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. Eleanor grew into a child who was equal parts Wild West and terrifyingly intelligent. She could rope a calf by age 5 and read by age 6. She asked endless questions, challenged every assumption, and refused to accept "because I said so" as an answer. Clara and Wade disagreed on parenting constantly. Wade wanted to protect her from everything. Clara wanted to teach her to protect herself. "She's climbing on the barn roof again," Wade said one afternoon, looking panicked. Clara glanced outside. Eleanor was indeed on the roof, helping Samuel repair shingles. "She's fine." Samuel's watching her. "She could fall. She could. But she won't because Samuel's teaching her how to move safely. That's more useful than keeping her on the ground where it's safe." Wade wasn't convinced, but he was learning to trust Clara's judgment on these things. By the time Eleanor was 8, she was a fixture at association meetings, sitting quietly in the corner but missing nothing. Ranchers learned not to underestimate her. The kid had opinions and wasn't shy about sharing them. One rancher made the mistake of dismissing something Wade said because it probably came from your wife anyway. Eleanor stood up. "So what if it did? My mother's smarter than most people in this room." The meeting went silent. Then McCarthy laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. "She's got you there, Patterson," he said. Wade was mortified. Clara was proud. That night, Clara sat Eleanor down for a talk. "You can't call out ranchers in meetings," Clara said, trying to sound stern. "Why not? He was being rude to you." "I know, but there are ways to handle rudeness that don't involve public confrontation." Eleanor crossed her arms. "You publicly confronted Evelyn Graves. That was different." "How?" Clara didn't have a good answer for that. Wade appeared in the doorway, clearly trying not to laugh. "Eleanor, go to bed. Your mother and I need to talk." After Eleanor left, Wade sat beside Clara. "That kid is exactly like you." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's wonderful." Wade kissed her. Terrifying, but wonderful. The years continued their march. Eleanor became a teenager who could outride most cowboys and argue circles around educated men. The ranch thrived. Wade's leadership transformed the association into something that actually served ranchers instead of the powerful. And slowly, Evelyn Graves faded into irrelevance. Clara saw her one last time at a territorial celebration. Evelyn looked older, harder, more alone than ever. Her wealth remained, but her influence had evaporated. People were polite but distant. Evelyn caught Clara's eye across the crowd. For a moment, Clara saw something that might have been regret. Then Evelyn turned away, and Clara let her go. There was no triumph in destroying someone, even someone who tried to destroy you. Evelyn had built an empire of fear and control, and it had left her with nothing real. Clara had built a family, a home, a legacy. The difference was obvious. One evening, when Eleanor was 15 and off somewhere learning to break horses with Samuel, Wade found Clara in the kitchen making bread. "Remember when you arrived?" he asked. "Hard to forget. I was terrified." You hit it well.
I'd had practice. Clara kneaded the dough, her hands strong from years of work. I was so sure I'd fail, that you'd realize hiring me was a mistake and send me away. I thought about it, Wade admitted. Clara turned to stare at him. Really? That first week, you looked so out of place and the crew was awful to you. I thought maybe I'd made a mistake bringing someone so delicate out here. Delicate?
Wade grinned. I know, I was an idiot. You're about as delicate as a pissed-off bear. Clara threw flour at him. Wade laughed and pulled her close despite the mess. But then you saved the supplies during the flood, he continued, and stood up to Evelyn, and fought off Hartford, and raised Eleanor to be fearless. And somewhere in there, I realized I hadn't made a mistake. I'd gotten luckier than I deserved. Clara's eyes burned. Wade, I mean it. Before you arrived, this place was just a ranch. Buildings and cattle and work. You turned it into a home. You made me remember what it felt like to be human instead of just surviving. We did that together. Yeah, we did. Wade rested his forehead against hers. Thank you for not running, for staying, for choosing this life even when it was hard. Clara kissed him, tasting flour and coffee and 20 years of shared struggles and triumphs. I'd choose it again, she said. Every time. Eleanor crashed through the door, covered in mud and grinning. Samuel says I'm ready to break horses solo. Can I? Wade and Clara looked at each other, having this entire conversation silently. Wade sighed. Ask your mother, Clara smiled. Yes, but you're cleaning that mud before you track it everywhere. Eleanor whooped and ran back outside, still muddy. She's going to break her neck, Wade muttered. Probably, but she'll do it fearlessly. Clara returned to her bread. That's what matters. The sun set over Iron Hollow Ranch, painting everything gold. Smoke rose from the bunkhouse where the crew was settling in for the night. Horses whinnied in the corral. Somewhere, Eleanor was probably doing something dangerous and wonderful. Clara looked around at everything she'd built, not with money or status or power, but with work and stubbornness and refusal to accept that she didn't deserve good things. 20 years ago, she'd arrived broken and alone, convinced her best years were behind her. She'd been wrong. Her best years had been waiting here all along, in this harsh land, with this stubborn man, building this impossible life one day at a time. Wade wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He asked. About how I got here. About everything that had to go wrong for everything to go right. Any regrets? Clara thought about her first marriage, the years of being told she wasn't enough, the poverty and loss and struggle. All of it had been necessary to make her into someone who could survive Wyoming, someone who could build this life. No, she said firmly. No regrets. Good. They stood like that as darkness fell, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something that would outlast them both. Eleanor would inherit this ranch someday. She'd run it with the same fierce determination Clara had shown, the same stubborn honor Wade embodied. She'd face her own challenges, fight her own battles. But she'd do it knowing she came from people who didn't break, who stood their ground, who chose each other and kept choosing each other every single day. That was the real legacy. Not the land or the cattle or the money. It was the lesson that you didn't have to be perfect to be worthy. That strength came from surviving, not from never struggling. That home wasn't a place you found, but something you built with your own hands. Clara had arrived at Iron Hollow Ranch expecting nothing but survival. Instead, she'd found everything she'd never known to want, and that she thought was enough, more than enough. It was everything.